So hold on. Do bosses like Michael Scott actually exist? And if you work or worked for one, what's your craziest story? My first boss in America, I was 21, he was Asian American, I'd never seen The Office, but noted the absurdity. He would get free potato chips from a guy in a company truck and would stuff his cheeks in the middle of telling me what to do. He always offered some. Fired a coworker for screaming some prejudiced stuff at me by just yanking her out the door. Called another coworker a cub or a baby lion because she was tiny with like wild, unruly hair. Would do a small mini roar whenever she was about to report for her shift or when I mentioned her name. Ran around the place with a wig on his head imitating me, brought his daughter to work and gave her piggyback rides in the office, would ask me to take videos. Would talk to black people in a black way. He would say, "What's up, shorty?" to the ladies and "What's poppin'?" Called the guys Tyrone and would say cuss words in his most convincing black voice. It was actually pretty good. Would ask me to teach him random Arabic words so he could yell them sporadically in the middle of the day. He always got the accent right. Had an open door policy and would do shots in his office. Started a small chicken farm in the back of the building and would give out whole chickens to the staff. Had me and a coworker try to butcher one time. I couldn't and nicked it just a little bit and shrieked, spraying all three of us. Received a visit from the city people to tell him he couldn't keep chickens in the back. He was rounding the main floor with a small basket of freshly laid eggs just as they were asking for him. Did the chicken farm again the next summer, this time with a small garden growing squash, cucumber, corn, etc. to disguise the chicken coop. Happily gave out vegetables along with the chicken. Would be extremely proud of taking home a tray of his own eggs to his children, ate 2 fresh eggs every morning. Bought a wok to work to deep fry sausages in, sometimes made lunch in the back. The entire floor would smell like food and he would round us all, 3 of us, to his office to eat. Would regularly fall asleep under his desk. The snoring was so loud you could hear it in the front. Once a client asked what that noise was and I said it was the plumbing. Woke up after his naps looking puffy but acting as if nothing happened. Would immediately go next door for a cherry coke. Would constantly eat hard candy to stay awake during the day. And ate too many edibles at a party I hosted once and passed out. Told me to hire someone, but when he saw the girl, did a comical thing with his face, eyebrows raised and eyes big, think Ken Jeong, because she was having trouble fitting into her chair. She was a bigger girl. Took away chairs the next day because they, quote, encouraged us not to concentrate on the client. The girl was a no-call, no-show the following week. Had a love-hate relationship with the groundhog not long into his farming venture. He never caught the little guy. Once threw a cricket at me from the very opposite end of the office floor. He and another coworker kept such straight faces as I finally convinced myself the cricket flung itself at me. I watched the cameras at the end of the day only to see them do it. I'm still traumatized. Has an office to this day full of the weirdest collection of things. A few feathers from favorite chickens of his that he had since consumed, all named and dated. A rabbit paw someone gave him, a goat's hoof. A framed quote I told him, told to me by a very baked homeless person. I don't remember the rest, it's just an odd place to go into. Had a hard time growing a beard and would ask me what I thought of the progress of his quote soup taster. Overall, nicest boss I've ever had, well-meaning if a little racially insensitive, all while being fascinated by other people's cultures. He would buy different cuisines for us to try each week. Gave bonuses because he knew the job didn't pay much, so that was always a nice surprise. He paid my former coworker when she had to stay home all through her husband's illness. Also, he loves llamas, alpacas, baby goats, and when I showed him how to use Reddit, he would almost always send me an alpaca photo. I still get a photo now and then. And 3 years after leaving, he still sends me photos of his illegal farm and recently asked me to post his cucumbers on Reddit. Also, I forgot to add that he fell into a poison ivy bush once and didn't know right away. He ran around screaming until we sat him in his office and put medicine on his wounds. He was so miserable for days, it was hard to watch. He dove headfirst into the wall when asleep once and needed to go to the doctor and get 3 stitches. He came to work that morning with a huge lip and kept having to explain himself all day. We kept joking that his wife was roughing him up. He still insisted on snacking as usual, and at one point he sipped ketchup with a straw. Okay, wait, hold on a minute. He ran around the place with a wig on his head, imitating him, the OP? Identity theft is not a joke, Jim. You know what I mean. Story 2. My boss at a pizza shop in high school was out of control. First, he made getting raises a game eventually and handed them out for odd reasons. He liked a table my friend got that the credit card machine sat on so much he got a raise. Another kid was playing with a penny at the end of the night and he kicked it into the air and it landed in a hat someone was holding. I won an election to be the first person listed on the timesheet, becoming numero uno according to him, and got a raise. Second, he was a person who overate and loved gluttony. He asked if we wanted lunch all the time, and if we turned it down, he became irate. He brought us 2 sandwiches with 1 pound of turkey each on them, 5 granola bars, 5 fruit snacks, and 2 Gatorades. That lunch was brought frequently, and if we didn't eat it all, he was angry. He drove an hour away during our shift one time to get pizza we had not tried before because it was the best in the state. People who didn't try it were shunned that day. He bought 100 tacos from Taco Bell and made us have an eating contest for our lunch. He was so happy when someone ate 7 and was basically going to hurl. He paid a coworker to eat a bag of dog treats and filmed it. It was an event after work. Third, after a closing shift, he got back from the casino and won $4K from poker. He demanded we go to the gentleman's club and drink with him. We were 18 at the time. Fourth, he never trained anyone and just expected everyone to know everything and anything about our pizza place. We always had to hire and train the people. He just kind of sat there. Fifth, he loved online poker, loved it, and would often play during our shifts. His desk was right in the middle of the store. He wasn't supposed to have a desk, but he did right there. He was playing poker during the 5 p.m. Friday rush and just had us work in the store. "Can you get the register? I'm in the middle of a hand," was all too common. My friend drove past the store at 1 a.m. multiple times and saw him sitting in the store playing poker with all the lights on, just totally dialed in. We often found the store unlocked and ovens going in the morning because he just up and left after poker binges. Him winning or losing really set the tone, but honestly, you just got used to him not working and having to close the store down because he was so dialed in. This was in 2007, so think of the phones we had then. He loved text bombing people. He would demand the workers get in a circle and furiously text someone not at work. He wouldn't let us stop until we sent about 400 texts collectively as a group. He would laugh and cackle so hard, he would peck at his BlackBerry so fast and just scream. I mean, scream, he was having so much fun. He also started fights with every restaurant around us. He was a male version of Karen. His order would be slightly wrong, and then he would storm over there and start crap nonstop with them until he got a refund. I would state I'm going to get lunch somewhere, and he would not even let me leave to get it because he hated the owner or was fighting with them. Eventually, all restaurants within a mile of us were off limits, which was about 20 or so places he had pick fights with. He was well known and nobody ever fought back for some reason. We had to order food from across town if we actually wanted someone to serve us because he pissed everyone else off so bad. Story 3. The boss I had in this company wasn't like Michael Scott. He looked a lot like Homer Simpson, though. But the company itself was Dunder Mifflin. I watched The Office right before working in this company and thought, no way this happens in the real world, right? Because so far I had worked in very professional places. But then these things happened. General manager had a daughter who was a junkie, and so he hired her. It was company policy not to hire relatives. No, it wasn't his company. Said daughter liked to fool around with the truck drivers who stayed overnight to depart in the early morning. Fell in love with one who was married. He said he would leave his wife for her. Wife got pregnant, daughter showed up to work, hammered, and trashed the office. A sales employee accused the HR manager of having an affair with the general manager. Yells were yelled. A woman once called and told me to connect her with the general manager. I asked her name and she said, "I'm his lover, he'll know." Thereafter, the general manager called me to clarify that the woman was not his lover. Daughter of the general manager liked to flirt with the sales representatives, but she was married, so she started flirting with them, saying it was me, using the company phone we shared. When I found out, I took the phone and showed it to my manager. He downplayed the whole thing. The messages were really explicit. This same girl got pregnant by one of the production bosses, 35 years her senior. He was married with 4 children. She was married with 2 children. They now live together with all their children plus 1. 2 workers were working on a ladder without helmets or any protection. One almost fell, the other one saved him but fell himself. Didn't pass away but ended up with bad neurological damage. He fell head first. The one who had been saved took his own life 2 months later out of guilt. Then the company bought helmets. The father of the young man who took his own life continued working exactly at the place where he found his son. A marketing worker once told me right in front of the HR manager that he would hop through my house's window at night. The HR manager giggled and said, "Don't let him catch you." I once was violently yelled at for the disappearance of a check I hadn't even touched. Said check was found at the bottom of the general manager's daughter's desk drawer, expired. An elder man who was in negotiations with the marketing manager kept insisting on taking me to his beach house. When I complained to the manager about how inappropriate this was, he laughed and said, "That man can't even get it up." I could go on, really, but you get the idea. Also, I just remembered one that was actually hilarious. This company produced and sold GMO corn. There were too many corn sacks, so the company had a deposit somewhere in the field about 15 feet from the office. When the annual fiscal audit came, my boss was worried he would have to take the auditors there. I asked, "Is it because your tax declaration is not accurate?" "No, it's just infested with huge rats." "Well, why don't you take a few cats to get rid of them?" "We did. The rats eliminated the cat." I later told one of the engineers, "The rat situation can't be that bad, can it?" And he laughed and walked away laughing. Okay, hold on, I have one more. There was this lady who worked there, Karen, haircut and attitude, did the bare minimum. She once got a kind of illness around her eye, and instead of taking it to a real doctor, she went to a natural healer. Thereupon, it was scrubbed with a live frog. Yeah, you heard that right, a live frog. Okay, so one last one. There was a gorgeous Japanese bush right outside the window, right? I wanted to know its name, so I asked one of the agronomic engineers what it was. With a straight face, he said, "That's an ivy." I said, "That's literally a bush." He went bright red and answered, "Good, I was testing you," and left. Okay, hold on. Can I just say that was a wild ride from start to finish? Yells were yelled. I laughed way too hard on that one. And if you're enjoying the video too so far, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, so you don't miss out on any of my future uploads. Story 4. Kieran. He went to Germany and rented a car. He didn't know how to drive in Germany and hit 8 cars in a rental car lot. He asked me to use my company card to pay the insurance premium. I told him no. We had so many communication problems, meaning I was a woman and he didn't respect me, that HR recommended we have Monday morning one-on-ones. He never showed up for them. I kept a record. He complained to HR that we weren't having the meetings he wasn't showing up to. He told me that the woman who was stuck on a project with him could receive a form of gratis up to $500. She chose a PlayStation, obviously, and then when I was called on my company purchase, he wouldn't say that he specifically allowed the transaction, and attempted to get me fired because he was tired of me always calling him on his BS. I handled his wife's resume and application to the DMV, his mortgage papers, his insurance papers, his whole family's passports, all things that went beyond my position scope. HR stepped in to tell him to only have me do work-related tasks, and he told me to never talk to HR again. He's the boss and I'll do what he says. He was standing with his same-level executive coworkers, all of whom I supported, and while the other 3 wished me good morning, he literally went out of his way to ignore me. The irony is that he volunteered me for a lot of crap I excelled at and failed up while he failed out. Turns out the protection he got while his brother was CIO disappeared as soon as the brother left the company. He transferred out of IT and became engineering's problem before I left the company. Also, at a company Christmas party, he bet the department that we wouldn't climb the rock wall faster than him. He ended up severely spraining his ankle and withholding the $100. Also, another boss decided we needed to have a raffle to boost morale. I got an iPad and some gift cards. Boss who wanted to boost morale won the iPad and kept it. Freaking like, what? None of us could believe it. Story 5. My boss is certainly Michael Scott-esque. When I first started, I was essentially Pam as well, since I was both receptionist and his assistant to some extent. My favorite story was back when we were prepping for a conference. Some context, he's terrible with the English language in general and will mangle phrases and descriptions to no end, how the turntables. So on a group call, he kept talking about wanting a golden hamster ball to do giveaways with. Was raving about how great it would be spinning around while people walked by, all the while everyone on the call was just sitting in confused silence. However, by that point, I'd become so good at decoding his nonsense that I knew he was referring to a gold raffle cage and sent him an image privately asking if that's what he was thinking. To this day, he still talks about the fact I can read his mind and must be psychic, and he still refers to it as a hamster ball. All in all, he's a pretty nice guy and a solid boss. Hired me based on a gut feeling and has been decent to me ever since. I think I knew it would be a good fit when during the interview he tried to tell me about the 4 pillars of the company and forgot one. Told me later it was knowledge. Alright, so this right here is Michael Scott level perfection. Story 6. So he wanted a pomegranate for lunch and they were out of season, but that didn't stop him from sending me on a quest to every grocery store in town in search of a pomegranate. Multiple produce guys laughed at me, but that was the easiest $13 an hour I've ever made. And no, I did not find a pomegranate, and when I came back, he was eating Subway and he seemed to have forgotten he'd even sent me. Maybe I could have gone home or to the movies, etc., but IDK, driving around leisurely, listening to the radio, seemed like a pretty good alternative to doing my actual work at the time. I did in fact check the gas station in Carbondale. They also do not carry pomegranates unless they are in season. Story 7. I used Michael Scott as a reference point for an old boss of mine from the moment I started working there. He made Chewbacca noises on the regular because of one of my coworkers' names sort of vaguely sounded like Chewbacca. It didn't. Used voice to text extremely loudly in his office for no reason to send really personal messages. Got really excited and wore a specific vest anytime we had after-work outings scheduled. Shouted the same like 7 references to old movies and extremely awkward hip-hop song quotes 100 times a day, and insisted on greeting all of our international coworkers very loudly in their language. They all speak perfect English, of course, looking around for approval afterward and then fully giggling at everyone's French's accents on conference calls. He also told me a lot about an improv show he did for a full year after it happened. That said, he had all the good parts too. He never hesitated to go to the mat for any of us, whether we deserved it or not. He gave really sage business advice and great examples of how to face challenges out of absolutely nowhere. And he came to every community play I did in the 4 years I worked for him and told everyone else in the office how good I was in it for the following month and chastised them for not coming. When things got really serious or bad in my life, he couldn't have been more kind, helpful, and supportive. Honestly, probably the best boss I'll ever have. Alright, so this has got to be the most accurate Michael Scott in real life so far. Mostly goofy and a little annoying, but also a good guy who's there for you when you need him. Story 8. Worked with a genuine Michael Scott, i.e. a nice, well-meaning person who just did some absurd things. We had abducting drills one day where we learned how to not be abducted. Noticeably, this was a regular, boring office in a regular, boring suburb. No reason why it would be on anybody's radar. He and several of the guys randomly broke out into a push-up contest. Again, white-collar office, middle-aged dudes in khakis. Couldn't remember the nationality of our Hispanic colleague. Tried to learn Spanish to make her feel special when she returned from maternity leave. First, what he learned was not Spanish, and second, she was from Portugal. She knew like 5 words of Spanish. Disappeared for 4 days, no call, no email, wouldn't respond to any of our attempts to reach him. Finally, someone drove out to his house to make sure he was alive. He was. He'd just forgotten to tell us he was taking the week off and then lost his phone in a lake. There were many, many moments like these. Great boss nonetheless, genuinely cared about everyone in the company. Also occasional moments of brilliance where he really got things done, but OMG, so many moments of ridiculousness. Story 9. Had a manager at my previous job that really tried his best to be everyone's BFF. He loved giving pep talks and thought he could raise our abysmal morale by being Mr. Positivity. Note, morale was low because we were always buried in work and paid crap. He'd crack jokes, randomly burst into song, and sneak up behind you to yell, "You're doing a great job!" Unfortunately, he was also super incompetent at his job. He relied heavily on a junior colleague for help with technical stuff. They practically did his whole job for him. And he spent days working on paperwork that should really only take an hour or two. If he had a problem, his answer was usually either to stare blankly at you until you left or to say, "Think positive and it'll work itself out." Thing he did I hated the most: whenever people would apply to work at the company, he'd print out the stack of resumes, sit at his desk, and read aloud all of the parts he found funny. He'd laugh at people for working at McDonald's or other fast food places. He loved finding grammar mistakes and making fun of them. If someone had a cringy objective statement, he'd guffaw over that too. This was all done very loudly, and it was an open office, so you couldn't avoid hearing it. That definitely lowered morale too. Alright, hold on. Making fun of people he's never met, Mr. Positivity, sounds like a real nightmare. And if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video, and thanks for hanging with me on this one.